became a successful lawyer, and I had a beautiful car, and I lived in a beautiful place, and I followed all the suggestions that society sells us for a happy, successful life, but I felt tremendously empty.
There are things in life that kind of synchronize, that allow you to go to that next step, because obviously there is a path that, you know, some people get dragged down, but there's a soul path as well, like what you're meant to actually bring to the world.
Learning how to plan a week is one of the most important things a human being can do, because your schedule doesn't lie. And a lot of us, we start our weeks like 5-alarm fires, and we're chasing the week versus running the week. As you get more successful, you become more vulnerable, because it's very easy to become arrogant. It's easy to start coasting. It's easy to stop getting up at 5 a.m. It's easy to lose that white belt mentality, which inspires you to keep learning and innovating. It's just easy to start coasting, and that's the beginning of the end.
So that together we have clarity, direction, and success way beyond what we ever previously thought possible. Here's your host, Frankie Lee.
First things first, guys, before we get started with this podcast, do me a solid favor and subscribe to this on whatever platform you're listening to it right now, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'd appreciate if you just hit that subscribe button, and it lets me know that the content that I'm putting out for you guys is hitting your ears at the right time. Much love. This podcast is sponsored by contentremoval.com. So whether you're looking to remove any images, videos, search results, fake Instagram accounts, get in touch with us at contentremoval.com.
Welcome back to the Frankie Lee podcast. Today, guys, we have an unbelievable guest that I've managed to pull from his busy life to come and instill some wisdom in all of you guys. The New York Times best-selling author, the man who has been a top leadership coach for years and years, Mr. Robin Sharma. Welcome to the podcast.
Great to be with you, Frankie.
I just wanted, because we're so short on time in terms of getting everything I want to get in today packed into this. I want to keep that intro nice and short and sharp. But
good.
So obviously, you've had many. Obviously, the 5 a.m. Club and the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari are your top books. But before we talk about your book today, but you know, one of the things that I noticed about you as an author is obviously you weren't originally an author. You were originally a high level lawyer. And I just wanted to kind of understand how you went from being a lawyer into wanting to become an author, and how that kind of transition happened in the initial period.
Sure. I think, as I say in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, instinct is more powerful than intellect. And I think one of the mistakes we often make as human beings is we don't trust that silent, powerful whisper within us that suggests where we need to go to find our greatest happiness, our greatest success, and our greatest impact. And so my intellect suggested, get a great education in my 20s, become a lawyer. It's the route to, a good life. And so I did all of those things, and I became a successful lawyer, and I had a beautiful car, and I lived in a beautiful place, and I followed all the suggestions that society sells us for a happy, successful life, but I felt tremendously empty. And so I would say, Frankie, what's the point of being a success but losing your soul in the process? I think one of the greatest crimes we can commit is the crime of self-betrayal. And I think true leadership and true heroism, and that's why the new book is the Everyday Hero Manifesto. I think everyday heroes do one thing really, really well. They block out the noise so they can listen to the signal. They get really, really quiet, and then they have the confidence and the bravery to follow where their deepest and highest wisdom wants them to be. And so I become this lawyer. I really felt like a very empty person. And so I started to follow where I was being led. And I started reading books about successful people, the great women and men of the world. I started experimenting with different modalities, from meditation to journaling to acupuncture to energy healing to, all these different things. And over a period of time, I made a very profound transformation, not only in my mindset, but what I call in my work, my heart set, my health set, and my soul set. And of course, as you rewire and restructure your interior core, then everything you touch reflects your next level of heroism. And so I I started this process of changing my life. I self-published a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. People laughed at the title. No one gave me much of a chance. I faced a lot of criticism, but very interestingly, I think someone once said synchronicities is the universe's way of remaining anonymous. And all this synchronicity started to speed up, and The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari became this word of mouth phenomenon, and it led me down this different path.
Yeah, I love that because I remember when I was reading into your backstory, obviously you were at a bookstore as well, weren't you? And it just so happened that you crossed paths with a top agent of a publisher that went and took that book from a self-published book and then published it as a publishing title. So there are things in life that kind of synchronize that allow you to go to that next step, because obviously there is a path that there is a path that, you know, some people get dragged down, but there's a soul path as well, like what you're meant to actually bring to the world.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, some people might say, well, this sounds very metaphysical, and maybe it is. And I would say for any heavyweight entrepreneur, you look at the best of the best. I mean, Steve Jobs didn't do focus groups. He said, here's what I think people want. I'm going to make something beautiful, and I'm going to send it out into the world. And I think when we push magic, like authentic, honest magic out into the world through our products and our services and our way of being, I mean, people reply to it, and the world replies to it.
I think it's beautiful as well when you can push that magic from the type of under your own name. I mean, there's a lot of people that go out as brands, hide behind a brand name, but the way obviously you're doing it in life, and the way that I'm doing it in life, and the way that we're bringing our magic to the world is we're bringing it with our own personal name, and then people want to invest in you because you're providing them value on the back end of that. I suppose my next question for you really is like why this book? I mean, you spent 16 months writing it. You were in deep in. You took yourself away during COVID. You put yourself into the tunnel and just wrote this book. I mean, and I know from listening to you've been on so many different interviews about this book and other books, and I know there's so much purpose in this one for you on a personal level. Give me a bit of an insight into why.
Well, I took a little break after writing the 5 a.m. Club. And then I started writing this new book, the Everyday Hero Manifesto, in February of 2020 in Tribeca, before the world got into this pandemic. And then essentially a month later, the world completely changed, and all this suffering and challenge was visited on us collectively on the planet. And so I usually travel a lot, and I was essentially grounded to my home and with my family. And so what I did was I used the quietude and I used the space to basically articulate the methodology that I've taught to billionaires and sports superstars and members of royalty for over a quarter of a century. And I clarified this methodology and how to create exponential productivity, how to be much happier, how to have a greater impact, how to build a great company, how to live a soaring life and push your magic into the world. And that's really what the book is all about. It has these frameworks like the troll deconstruction, the pyramid of peak productivity, and I just went very deep. Like you say, it's a very personal book. I shared a lot of my trials that I've never shared before. There's one chapter in the book, which is that time 10 years of my journals vanish. And, I share a lot of my struggles in the book and how to overcome them and how to use adversity as fuel for greater creativity and productivity and a better life. And I rewrote the book probably over 20 times because I just wanted to, I had these 16 months in the pandemic and I just wanted to get every word right. And I wanted to make it the best book, hopefully the best book I've ever done, to be of service to as many people as possible in this time where so many people are struggling, so many people are uncertain, so many people are scared, so many people in business are contracted, they're so worried about everything versus going out there and seeing this as a time to really shine a light in the darkness and add a lot of value to even more people.
I love that. What do you find obviously you've been around these people for over 10 years now, and obviously coaching at a high level and working with these kind of people, getting in their mind. What do you find is like the key thing that stops people from obviously getting past that point? You know that people hit that wall and they just can't seem to push through it. What are those critical things that people are really struggling with to move through to take them to that next level?
Well, I think there's a lot we can get into on that. I could get into the programming that we receive from our parents and teachers and peers, and then through media that essentially causes us to forget who we truly are. I think there are no extra people on the planet. I think every single one of us has gifts and talents. That's why the book is called The Everyday Hero Manifesto. It's not only the Mother Teresa's, Nelson Mandela's, Aristotle Onassis's, Hedy Lamar's that are the heroes, right? Those are the famous heroes, and those are people who launched movements in many ways and should be celebrated for their impact and showing what's possible for people to achieve. Having said that, what about the single mother or father who gets up at 3:30 and gets on a bus to go to work every day? What about the baker who rises early and no pun intended, and rises early to create incredible food at their little shop? What about the taxi driver who does their work like Picasso painted? What about the painter who is toiling in anonymity but believes in their work even though they're being laughed at every day, but they're still staying true to their vision? And so I think that's really, every one of us has the opportunity for heroism. But what happens is we receive this messaging, we receive this programming. It's almost like a brainwashing and a heart washing. And over time, we forget who we truly are. So that's one reason we get blocked. We forget who we are. We tell ourselves a story. We run a narrative, and any good positive psychologist will tell you our daily actions are aligned with our deepest beliefs. And I'll repeat that again because it's so important. Our daily actions always represent our deepest beliefs. So you can watch someone's daily behavior and tell the stories and programming they're running. And they might fight you, right? They might be running a victim story and they might fight you because if we repeat our story long enough, we actually believe it's true. Of course we do. And then we keep on repeating the same daily habits and rituals and behaviors. And then we shrink from our greatness and we forget who we truly are. And then we pedestal these great entrepreneurs and these great heroes and these great musicians and these great movement makers as somehow cut from a different cloth when they're just doing different things. So I think that's one thing. I think another thing is all of us fail, and it's the story we tell ourselves when we stumble that determines whether we're going to use the failure as fuel and the trials to strengthen, or whether we're going to stay in pain and say life is hard, I don't feel safe in the world, and I'm never going to produce anything, and I'm never going to rise, and I'm never going to start that business or write that book or find that true love because reaching and risk just hurts too much. So I think that's the second reason we stay blocked. And I think a third reason, and this is a big one, is nothing fails like success. So I know a lot of your followers from around the world are very successful, but nothing fails like success, as one of my clients once told me. And what that really means is, it's hard to get to world class, but what makes legendary is you sustain world class. And there's actually a whole chapter in the Everyday Hero Manifesto called The Titan's Decline. That's a model I've taught to many of the most successful business people in the world that explains how great companies fall from grace and great people lose that winning formula. And I'd simply say that as you get more successful, you become more vulnerable because it's very easy to become arrogant. It's very easy because you're the most successful person you know. It's easy to say, I'm going to retire. It's easy to start coasting. It's easy to stop getting up at 5 a.m. It's easy to lose that white belt mentality, which inspires you to keep learning and innovating. It's just easy to start coasting, and that's the beginning of the end.
In my head, I was in everything you said and every point that you touched on there. I was hearing in my head self-belief, self-belief, self-belief. because that is kind of something that you can instill within yourself to push yourself through these points in time that you've just talked about there. Really working on that. I don't know if you can touch on this from your point of view, but in your role as a leadership coach and all that stuff, do you believe? Because I personally believe this, but I believe there's a difference between confidence and self-belief. I just wanted to get, I believe, like from being in the boxing gym in the early days, I learned from a trainer that confidence can be shattered because that's exterior, and self-belief is instilled within. And I wonder if you could talk into that from your perspective and give me a bit of an insight into what you believe the differences are between self-belief and confidence.
That's an outstanding question and insight. Personally, I've never thought deeply about it, so I'm just giving you a quick and honest answer. But I think self-belief and confidence are the same to me, but then there's the cockiness that becomes arrogance. And I think, you know, I th- and I think confidence and self-belief are absolutely important because any great movement maker must believe in themselves when no one believes in themselves, right? Like every great visionary was initially ridiculed before they were revered. And so any disruptive idea is going to be called crazy. Any mighty mission is going to be laughed at. When you say, I'm going to run a marathon, I'm going to start a great business, I'm going to get super fit, I'm going to build an economic fortune, I'm going to find the love of my life, all those kinds of things are so disruptive to the status quo that are often there's too many good souls that are card-carrying members of the cult of mediocrity, and they just let that happen. So
The,
I think
the cult of
right?
mediocrity. Yeah.
Yeah, and essentially the Everyday Hero Manifesto it's an instruction manual to avoid average. And it has philosophy and it has methodology, and it just shares how to get out of those traps and snares that keep us small, because I think the world needs us to shine our light. The world needs us to produce beautiful things. The world needs us to be honorable and brave and loving and decent. And a lot of us don't know how to do that in terms of the tools. Like, where do we start? But I would say, you know, arrogance it's just such a snare for people, right? It's just such a snare.
Yeah, I think that we can all get trapped at certain points in our lives where we have to kind of have a word, because essentially everyone has an ego. We just need to learn how to manage it and harness it in the right light so we can actually deploy it to best serve the world. Because I think that's something that I've struggled with in the past when it's got on top of me, and I've had to bring it into line and bring it into coherence with what I want to actually bring, how I want to actually bring value. Because unless you do that, Robin, you can't really give any kind of service to the world at a higher level, and it kind of builds a barrier between you and people.
Absolutely. Like, again, to this point about you've got to believe in you when no one else believes in you. And then people are saying, well, I know that's important. How do I do it? And I just want to be tactical, if I may. What works really well for me is I journal. I mean, even before I got on here, but there's my journal. And sometimes as part of my morning routine, I just write one paragraph about the man I want to be today. One paragraph about, and habit researchers would call that a pre-commitment strategy. So that's one tool. Write a one paragraph statement about what you want to stand for this day, and do it in the quietude of the morning while the rest of the world is asleep. Obviously I'm going to say join the 5 a.m. club, because that gives you that 1 hour victory hour. In that book, I call it the victory hour. And anyone who's interested in rising at 5 a.m. can read the 5 a.m. club and learn the 20-20-20 formula. But just a tactic to build that confidence you're speaking about, or that self-faith, is write about who you want to become, because what you write about starts to restructure that self-story. Number two, meditation is really powerful. And for any one of the titans and heavyweights who listens to you who might discount that, well, then read the science, study the science on meditation, and look at the pharmacy of mastery it creates within you, and the
Yeah.
neurochemicals that it releases. So meditation is very, very, very powerful, and it does allow you to strip out all the messiness in the world so you hear the signal. Third thing I would say to build heroic levels of self-faith is to strip out the energy vampires and the dream stealers from your life. You can change the world, or you can be surrounded by naysayers who just don't get you. You can't do both. So that's number 3. Clean up your orbit and your ecosystem, what I call in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, your ecosystem. Fourth thing, read about the great women and men of the world. This morning when I was on my elliptical, I watched a 25-minute documentary on YouTube about Aristotle Onassis. And it was just fascinating. The innovations. He created the biggest super tanker in the world. He saw where the industry was going, and he was very prescient, and then he responded to it. He no one believed in him, but he saw opportunities and then created this life, and this impact. So read about the great women and men of the world, because when you read a book, it's like it's having a conversation with the author. And the more time you spend with people whose lives you want to be living, the more their stardust will rub off on you.
I think, and like you say, that's something that's very transferable. I mean, it's funny that you said about meditation, because I do a lot of meditation and a lot of breath work as well. And it's like, even earlier, I went but a couple of hours before I got on this interview with you, I went for a walk, and I for 25 minutes I breathed into how I wanted this interview to go, how I wanted it to flow, how I wanted to turn up, and how I was going to bring value to the audience with getting you on the, and value to you and value to the audience from having this conversation. And when you set that intention and you put it into the world, that you're going to turn up and put out this great piece of content that's going to help people have a shift in their life, that's when you can really start to when you get on an interview like this, and you can really start to feel that coming through, because you've set the clear intention of what you want to achieve from it, so that people can get something out of it for themselves.
Absolutely. I think the universe has an incredibly fair accounting system. And someone once said you can preach a better sermon with your actions versus your words. And so you're right. When you have these intentions to be of service, an instrument of service, the world replies. People feel it. People feel your honesty. People feel you want to be helpful. I know you have so many entrepreneurs who follow you. Is this value for a business builder? Absolutely. If your intention is to serve, if your intention is to help people live great lives, if your intention is to deliver massive amounts of value to the people who are your customers, well, then your products are going to reflect that intention. The way you treat them will reflect that intention. Your branding will reflect that intention. Everything about your organization will reflect that intention. And I think that leads to another point, which is there's a real tendency in this world to make it okay to push mediocrity. But as I say in the book, it's much wiser, I believe, to push one masterwork versus 1,000 mediocrities. And I think it's very easy to put out lots of content or lots of material or many apps versus having the intention, having the patience to stay with one project day after day, month after month, maybe even year after year, until you have your Sistine Chapel ceiling that you put out to the world. Right? And then, if you take the time to push magic, the world is going to, for generations, they're going to come to the Sistine Chapel and look up at it, or see that Mona Lisa, or, look at that Michelangelo's David. But I think we live in a world where we feel pressured to push out lots of things, and we feel pressured to move on to the next shiny toy, versus isolating ourselves and doing the work that stands the test of time and that becomes monuments to our mastery and testimonies to the possibilities that we want our lives to be.
Uh, and that is so powerful, because I think that with obviously with Gary Vaynerchuk and all these types of people on Instagram, with everything that they're trying to push, and I understand why they're trying to push it. They want people to try lots of things and do lots of things, but it's similar to the way that the way that you write, in terms of how you approach writing and how I approach podcasting. We're singularly focused on becoming the best at our art and our craft, and we put our time and our souls and our everything into it, so that and you can tell when we speak about it that we both love it, and we're not trying to be a TV presenter, because that's not what we set our mission on. And it's kind of like what you said at this a few moments ago was, at the start of your day, you write a paragraph to clarify what you want to be and how you want to turn up that day. And I tell people, Robin, that people should write clearly in the journal, on one side of the page, who they are, and on the other side of the page, who they want to be. And by doing that and being radically honest with yourself, you can see the incongruence with how you're turning up compared to how you want to be in the world, and you can put that stuff right. I mean, is there any other ways that people can really set out to get to that? What is that one thing that they should be doing? How do you feel that people can really set that intention?
Well, are you asking what's the one thing people should do to get to their next level of world class?
Yeah. In essence, yes. In terms of, like, obviously, like for me, I know podcasting is my thing that I'm going to put my heart and my soul into. Obviously, for you, it's author. A lot of people out there are looking for that thing, and they're distracted by all these noisy things that you say, all these new things that are flashing in their face all the time, and they just want to be able to rein themselves in and gain that focus and clarity. And is there any
Well,
tools or frameworks you can give them to do that?
yeah, I don't think there is one thing. I think if the question is how can we strip out all the complexity so we get monomaniacally focused on our mighty mission, I mean, that's exactly what the Everyday Hero Manifesto is all about. It's full of the tools and the frameworks and the philosophies of the world's most successful people. But if you want some tactics, because this world right now, it's like all about the tactics. And one thing I'd love to say is methodology without philosophy is an empty victory. Our world is obsessed right now with routines and tactics and where do I start? And those things are very important, and I share a lot of those in the book. Having said that, your philosophy determines which mountaintop you climb. And so if you don't know your philosophy and you haven't clarified what's most important, what's your mission, what are your values, what do you want to stand for, what are your truths, then you're going to be really busy doing the wrong things. And Peter Drucker, the great management guru, said, there is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. And Confucius said, person who chases two rabbits catches neither. But let's get to the tactics. How do you strip away those things, the noise in this world of ours? I'd say number one, there's a tactic I call the tight bubble of total focus. Right now I'm in a writing room. No one can get to me. Not many people even know where I am. There's very few devices. I'm not someone who has notifications on. I get lost very often, and I have a series of work labs that I call my tight bubble of total focus. And when I go in there, and this is another idea from the Everyday Hero Manifesto, I run the five great hour rule. I don't think anyone needs to work more than 5 hours every day, especially if you have an entrepreneurial life, because the key is not how many hours you work. I do not subscribe to hustle and grind. The science confirms that leads to burnout and depletion, and you're not your best work. The heroic producers work intensely and fiery when they work, and then they go out and get a massage and sunbathe and mountain bike ride. So
It sounds like my
first
life.
tactic, find your, right? So find your tight bubble of total focus, a place where you can go to do real work versus fake work. Get rid of the notifications. Don't check your digital devices. Just be a serious producer and work for 5 hours. I've got these little clocks. They are incredibly valuable. I have no relationship with the company, but they're Braun clocks, and they've transformed my life, and I just set basically 5 hours and I work with the clock to get real work done. And then after that I recover. It's what I call the twin cycles of elite performance. I work for 5 hours. That's the high excellence cycle. Then I go into the deep recovery cycle, which is lunch with my family, walking in nature, reading, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the first tool. Second tool to get real work done would be a minimalist versus a maximalist. Don't have 50 friends, have 3 amazing friends. Don't read 100 books, master 2 books this year. Don't accept 1,000 projects, accept one project that you will harness all of your resources on, so you produce the finest work of your life. So that would be the second thing. Be a minimalist. Do few things really, really well. Number 3, I would say use news and social media as your servant, not as your master. So you might actually schedule certain times every 2 or 3 days to check your feed to produce value, etc. But obviously, an addiction to distraction is the death of your creative production. And there are a lot of people who are very hooked to their devices, and it's causing them to betray their genius and not really have great lives.
Yeah, because once you get hooked on a device, you become a consumer of content rather than someone who authors content, who puts content out into the world, who tries to think of value, like you say. One thing that I wanted to just clarify with you, when you're talking about 5 hours, do you just do 5 hours of straight work, or do you knock that into 2.5 hour blocks, or is that just like you start the clock and you just work for 5 hours?
Yeah, so I run my life I have a written schedule. There's a chapter in the Everyday Hero Manifesto where I explain my planning process. It's called the Weekly Design System. They can actually click on find a link in that chapter and download a video and my actual worksheet. But in a nutshell, I build my 7 days of my week with themes. So I've got operation days, and I've got creative days, and I've got my play days. And so on the operation days, that's when I do calls with my team and deal with suppliers, etc. On my creative days, often Tuesdays and Thursdays, I run the 5 great hours rule, and it's not broken, because the whole idea behind it, Frankie, is it often takes us 2 weeks to get 5 hours of world-class work done. So you don't want to break it. And this could be hopefully very helpful to all your viewers, but I'm also in fasted state, and I'm not giving any medical advice, but I fast a lot, because then I don't have, you train yourself. Eating breakfast and then going to get a snack and then going to get lunch. For me, when I'm in, creative mode, it takes up a lot of time. And also, I found it fascinating that when you're in fasted state, your brain releases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which optimizes your brain. And that's why I think isn't that interesting? That's why I think a lot of the great religious figures and spiritual masters and a lot of the great creative people, they fasted. And I realized that's the science behind it, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and probably a release of dopamine as well. But it's 5 hours uninterrupted. I'm working on a real project. I'm not doing phone calls. I'm in fasted state. I'll have a cup of coffee or 2, which is a great antioxidant and cognitive enhancer. And I listen to country music often, because I'm just really into country music these days.
How do you find the managing your use of coffee, right? Because I know it sounds a bit of a weird question, but I've recently been off caffeine now for 40 days. I took it out of my life because I found that I was trying to do the work in terms of like the 5 hours or the 3 or 4 hours, like what you said. But in order to keep me there, I just need to energy drink. I just need coffee. I mean, how do you even manage the caffeine without getting addicted to it like I did?
That's a really interesting question, and so real. I don't know. Coffee just, maybe it's. I mean, we all have different constitutions. Coffee, 2 cups of coffee in the morning works so well for me as a cognitive enhancer, and I just love the taste, and I find it a very sacred, simple, basic pleasure. So it's a very joyful thing for me. I don't feel I'm addicted to it. If I have coffee, it's interesting for me. If I have coffee in the afternoon, I can't sleep that night. So I'm really pretty careful about it, but it just works well for me. I think exercise is also morning exercise is an absolute game changer for anyone who wants to boost focus, creativity, productivity, peace of mind. And we could go to the neuroscience. It's so well known, but morning exercise releases dopamine, the inspirational neurotransmitter. I find it very interesting. It releases norepinephrine, which actually boosts focus. That's why after a workout, our brains slow down. You notice that,
Yeah.
right? And then
If I don't
releases.
go to the gym before I work, then it seems to me like my work just gets on top of me, and I just walk out the room.
Totally, totally, and um, it reduces cortisol. Exercise, it releases oxytocin. It just goes on and on. So I do that in the morning. That helps me be really focused, so I don't need more coffee. I don't know if I've ever had an energy drink. I'm not saying I'm so special because I'm not, but I just I prefer a bit more natural. Like the water and the coffee black coffee seems to work really really well for me.
So, so,
Yeah.
so in regards to your mornings, then essentially you're setting it out. You're getting up at 5 a.m. You're hitting an hour's worth of exercise or a walk or something physical, and then from 6 till and for 5 hours you're just locked in, and you've already planned it the day before, so you scheduled it out. You know it's a creative day, not another type of day. So you know what you're doing on that creative day. So you've literally planned everything before you've even stepped into the arena.
I plan my weeks on Sunday morning, and I create what I call a blueprint. And I usually don't get into the tactics because most people aren't really interested, but you clearly are. So it's not the sexiest thing, but I find learning how to plan a week is one of the most important things a human being can do, because your schedule doesn't lie. And a lot of us, we start our weeks like 5 alarm fires, and we're chasing the week versus running a week. And some people often say to me, well, Robin, a schedule 7 days ahead, it destroys your spontaneity. And someone once said to me at a live event, Frankie, allow planning to be your springboard so spontaneity can be your splash. And the most relaxed people are the people who have a clear sense of their schedule. Then they're running life on their own terms, right? So if you want peace, learn how to schedule. You want to be more spontaneous, build structure and systems into your life. It's not a rigid thing. I think it's a very peaceful thing. So yes, on Sunday morning while my family's asleep, I'll take an hour, I'll have a cup of coffee, and I will take this worksheet, like I mentioned. If anyone's interested in it, they can read that chapter in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, download the whole video, no charge whatsoever, get the worksheet. It's incredibly powerful, but essentially it's a big piece of paper, 7 days, starts at 5 in the morning, goes till 11 at night. And I just figure out the themes. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are often operational days for me, and I'll work out with a trainer on those days as well. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go into isolation. I do a lot of creative work on those days. I'm not available. And then Fridays are often I refuel. I go to art galleries. I'll, have a pasta lunch with my family. I'll read, but I just, really try to recharge on those days, because elite performance without deep recovery, leads to depletion. And yeah, weekends are often about reading and with my family, and nature, and all those kinds of things. Hope that sort of explained it
Yeah,
properly or
no.
clearly.
I just wanted to give people an insight from a higher level of how you approach things, because I think obviously a lot of people are going to go out and buy the book, and that's great, and they're going to have that. But I think it's really useful, even for myself, to understand how you're structuring things. I like to know how people are thinking about things and operating in terms of how they set themselves up to win. Obviously, you've won at a high level in a lot of areas of life, and I'd just love to understand how that's happened. It's clear to me that that's set from an intention of structure to be able to win at the level that you've won at. So I think that's a credit to yourself. I think another insight I'd love to get from you is, you mentioned that people should master two books. If you're gonna read books, master two books. So, like, obviously read and reread and reread. What are the two books then at this moment in time that are kind of really have you really got your mind into, in terms of like obviously your own's going to be one of the two books for a lot of people. What are the two books that really set your thinking patterns going that you work on?
It, and before I answer that, just to be of service to your audience, I want to mention one more thing about scheduling, because I think it's so important, which is I don't just schedule on that 7-day schedule. I don't just schedule work. I actually schedule my 5 a.m. victory hours. I schedule my family dinners. I schedule my meditation, because it's just so powerful. And I've read some research. What you write actually creates an impact in the brain, but I schedule all of those things, not in an obsessive way, but I do these blocks where it'll be, if I want to, I'm listening to a really great meditation of Jack Cornfield. He's an incredible meditation teacher, and so I want to really deepen in it. So twice this week I'll do the block for that. If there's, I really believe in reading. I think it's one of the master skills of true heroes in business and in life. So I'll have reading nights scheduled. I schedule my nature walks, and those give me anchors in my day. And then if I do them, I don't always do it, but if I have a good day, I'll do a little V with a circle around it, and that's a victory next to the block. So, and you just train yourself to close loops and follow through on your self-promises. And the more you follow through on your self-promises, the more willpower and bravery and self-love you're going to have. Two books. Here's a book right next to me right now. Kent Nerburn, he's written a book called Simple Truths. Another book that's next to me right now is the Jack Cornfield book I ordered. So that would be another one. No Time Like the Present. Here's a book that's been incredibly helpful to me, Melody Beattie, Journey to the Heart. And I read business books, and I read, I love, there's a great book to read. It's called Mandela's Way, and it's a very personal book about Nelson Mandela. So that's been a great book for me. I love The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, incredibly powerful and beautiful book. Yeah, those would be some of the books I go to on a regular basis.
And a lot of the books that you mentioned, especially a few of the end books, there are a lot of personal, how people are operating personally. So I presume that's why you're so interested in them. Like Mandela was a great man who operated with empathy and kind of could see things from both sides, even though he could have seen things from a persecution point of view. And that's probably why you've resonated so much with that, I presume.
I visited Nelson Mandela's cell twice, and the first time, Frankie, it transformed my life. It was a winter's day in July, because obviously South Africa's under the equator, and I took the ferry over to Robin Island. I was met with a guide. The guide showed me the limestone quarry where Nelson Mandela worked for, I believe, 7 years, toiled in the sun, damaged his lungs, damaged his eyes, and they didn't use the rocks that he chipped for anything, just to break. It was designed to break his spirit, because we all need purpose, but there was no purpose in that. Then the guide took me to the courtyard where they would exercise, and where Nelson Mandela would act. I think there was a tomato tree, and he and members of the ANC would dig a hole and hide his manuscript of his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. And then I saw the propaganda office where they would hide letters from his family, and so he wouldn't receive them. Again, psychic torture, not hearing from his family. And then the guide walked me into a cell, which was this incredibly tiny cell. There wasn't even a bed in there. There was just a cloth mat and a table that he'd write on, and and it looked over the courtyard. And I asked, it was just like so moving to see where this man spent 18 years of the 27 years of confinement. And I asked the guide, I said, "Did you know him?" And he said, "Yes, I served with him for a number of years as a fellow ANC prisoner." And I said, "What was Nelson Mandela like?" And he said, "Oh, that man was a humble servant." And I mean, And you're right. When he came out, he invited the prosecutor who was pushing for the jail sentence. He invited him to dinner, and he invited one of the jailers who had kept him in prison to his inauguration. And he was asked, why would you possibly invite a jailer who kept you in prison? And he said, because if I didn't, I'd still be in prison. And so, prison of the spirit, prison of the spirit. And so, I mean, that is the choice we all have. Like, no, that yes, Nelson Mandela was a great hero and titan of humanity, but every one of us, in our own personal way, we can get to show heroism. Like, you look at what's going on in the world right now, and if you're a feeling person, how could you not feel the suffering that's going on? And I've never seen so much volatility in the world in all of my life. And it's very easy to give away your power to what's going on and follow the news and just. But I think the best things we can do is pay attention to what's going on, so we can protect and pivot and be agile and serve and take good care of our family. But I think it's also important to maintain our hope. And it's important to just say, well, I can't control these events, but I can manage what I call in the Everyday Hero Manifesto, the 4 interior empires: our mindset, our heart set, our health set, and our soul set. So many pundits in the world right now are talking about mindset is everything. I think it's mindset, which is our psychology; heart set, which is our emotionality; health set, which is our physicality; and soul set, which is our spirituality. And when we learn the tools to optimize those 4 interior empires, you're right, because the books I'm reading are about within. And when you work within on those 4 interior empires, you literally start to battle-proof an interior architecture so that your axis of power comes from within versus without. And that's when you shift from victimhood to heroism. You don't get your power from, my day was good, the world is good, my business is good, the world is okay, so now I feel okay. That's a very vulnerable place to be. You want to be like the great spiritual masters, and this is like obviously a lifetime journey, and I'm far from where I want to be, but I'm better than where I was. You want to be in a place where even if the ground from under you completely falls apart, you're at peace. In other words, you're like the great spiritual masters say, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. And if we can get to that place, then we navigate the world and we're in it and we're functioning at an extraordinarily high level, but our power is not fake power, it's real power.
The power comes within you, and you don't need to try and get it from external sources. I love it. I love the way you've articulated that. I mean, that is just so powerful on all different, like that. As you were speaking it, my face was just smiling from ear to ear because I felt every piece of that on a personal level. Because like you cannot. This is where most people go wrong. Most people are seeking external things to give them joy, to bring them that contentment, when really that contentment starts within. It starts with the meditation. It starts with knowing who you are. It starts with becoming that person that you truly can become. And I think that's such a powerful statement that you've put right there. I know that we're sensitive on time, and I just want to finish with this one for you, because I think I ask this question to a lot of my guests because I think I just wanted to get their insights into how they would want to leave the world. But if you had to check out the world tomorrow, you couldn't leave anything behind, no books, nothing, but you could just leave like a paragraph, a statement in terms of like a gift that you could, of wisdom that you could leave the world. What would that piece and pearl of wisdom be from you, from your mouth?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I used to believe in legacy. I wrote a book 20 years ago called Who Will Cry When You Die. It was all about legacy. And we hear a lot about legacy these days. Live your life in such a way that you live in the hearts of those you leave behind, to paraphrase the words of Joseph Campbell. There's actually a chapter at the end of the Everyday Hero Manifesto, which is forget about your legacy. I think legacy doesn't matter. I think legacy is the sport of the ego. when we're dead, we'll be a pile of ashes in a urn on a mantle above a fireplace next to people's pictures and Little League trophies. We're only going to matter to a few people. So I don't think it matters how you live, what people say about what you when you're dead, because you'll be dead. I think what matters is how you live today while you get to be alive. But to answer your question, Frankie, a paragraph of wisdom, I'd say, you know, there are no extra people on the planet. I'd say every one of us has honor deep within us. We have bravery deep within us. We have gifts and talents deep within us. We have bravery and love in our hearts. In a very complex world, a lot of us have put a shell or armor over those gifts, and then we've lost the intimacy with who we truly are. And so, and this is a bit more than a paragraph, but it's like, I think the journey of everyday heroism and greatness is you make the journey back day by day for as long as we get to live, to remember who we truly are. And I think when you remember who you truly are, your gifts, your talents, your nobility, your love, your hope, that's the victory. And anything else you achieve in the outer world is just gravy.
I think I've honestly I knew this interview would not disappoint me. I knew it.
Good.
Honestly, Robin, I just appreciate all your time, guys. That is Robin Sharma. He's written some incredible books. I'm reading. I've just started the Everyday Hero Manifesto myself. I think you guys would be wise to go and start it. I mean, it costs like $20 to $30 from any bookstore. We'll put a link in the show notes as well. At Robin Sharma on Instagram, and anywhere else you'd like people to go to see more of your work.
Anyone who wants to go deeper can go to the mothership. It's robinsharma.com, and get on my mailing list. And I send videos every 2 weeks, and I send a rich stream of value based on everything we've talked about to my mailing list. So again, robinsharma.com. And and I do a podcast called The Mastery Sessions. Anyone should just go to YouTube and search Robin Sharma, and you'll find all my videos. There's, I think, a few hundred of them, and lots of great value.
Hopefully one day I get an invite on that podcast, Robin, eh?
Yeah, I don't do guests. It's just like content. But maybe if I do an interview show, I'd love to interview you.
I think having the two best looking bald fellas in the world on a podcast together, not just this one, but on others as well would be a good thing. I'll put the hat on so that we didn't blend in on the video edit.
You look like my better looking younger brother.
Yeah, well, hopefully this is just the start of many podcasts that we do in the future. So I just want to say again, thank you so much for giving value to the audience, and thanks for your time. It's been an absolute honor. And guys, if you can do me a favor, subscribe to on whatever platform you're listening to, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you get your podcasts. Send me a message, send Robin a message, let us know how that podcast went for you. We'll try and respond to as many as possible. And share this content if it resonated with you with as many of your friends and family and everyone else that you can instill some wisdom in as you can. I'd love you to carry this message. This podcast is my biggest passion, as the books are for Robin. So we just both appreciate you, and thank you so much.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Frankie Lee podcast.